Welcome to Honeybee, real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. My name's Charles. The day my wife's attorney tried to paint me as the world's worst father during our custody hearing for our son, he and she had no idea what was about to unfold. I kept my eyes on Lauren's face as she nodded along to every accusation. She clearly believed she'd be walking out of that courtroom with full custody of our 8-year-old son, Ben. What she didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this exact situation since Ben turned 5. They were both in for a surprise. But to explain how we ended up in that courtroom, I need to go back a bit. Lauren and I had been married for a decade, and most of those years were marked by constant arguments. These weren't harmless disagreements couples worked through. They were real, heated fights about money, my job, and the life she thought she deserved. She often reminded me that I wasn't providing the standard of living she wanted, pointing out that her friends' husbands earned more, drove nicer cars, and took their families on better vacations. I worked as a transmission specialist at an auto shop on the south side of town. It wasn't the highest-paying job, but it was steady. After taxes, I brought in enough to cover our 2-bedroom apartment, utilities, groceries, and still have a little left over. In our small Ohio town, it was a decent living. Lauren saw it differently. She noticed the grease under my fingernails, the work uniform with my name stitched on the pocket, and felt embarrassed. Things only got worse once Ben started school. At school events, she'd make comments about how different our lives could be if I were more like the other dads. She began going out with her friends more, staying out late, and coming home with stories about men they met at bars and restaurants. One night, after a particularly tense argument about her disrespect, she told me she'd met someone else, a man in commercial real estate who could supposedly give her the life she wanted. 2 weeks later, she filed for divorce. Financially, there wasn't much to fight over. We rented, had around $9,000 in savings, and my 10-year-old Honda Civic wasn't exactly a prize. But I knew she would fight hard for full custody of Ben. The problem was, she had a point, at least about the early years. For the first 5 years of Ben's life, I worked 60+ hours a week, leaving before 7 a.m. and getting home after 7 p.m. Lauren handled drop-offs, pickups, parent-teacher conferences, doctor's visits, and bedtime routines. I was a weekend dad, movies, backyard baseball, fun outings, but not part of his daily structure. When Ben turned 5, I realized how vulnerable that left me. If Lauren ever left, a judge would likely see her as the engaged parent and me as absent. Even before she met her new man, I could see where things were headed. So, I made a choice that would eventually save my chances at joint custody. I asked my boss to cut my hours back to 40 a week. He wasn't happy. I was one of his most experienced guys. But he agreed. That meant about $8,000 less a year, which Lauren immediately complained about. She accused me of being lazy and not caring about providing for our family. I never told her the real reason because I didn't want to tip her off or start a fight about divorce before we were there. With my afternoon free, I began picking Ben up from school every day at 3:15. I attended every conference, every school play, every class party. When he got sick, I was the one in the doctor's office with him. I saved every permission slip, every signed form, every report card, and every medical record listing me as the attending parent. I took plenty of photos, school events, baseball games, homework nights, just regular dad moments, but always keeping the date and time intact. Lauren noticed, but thought it was because she'd been pushing me to step up for years. At first, she was even happy about it, not realizing I was building a legal foundation for shared custody. Within months, it became second nature. Annual checkups? I was there. Eye exams? I sat through them. When the school nurse called about a playground injury, I left work to get him. I built relationships with his teachers, coaches, and doctors, people who saw me consistently showing up. By the time Lauren officially filed for divorce, I had been the primary daily caretaker for over 2 years. Lauren was still involved, but the roles had flipped. She'd started working part-time at a boutique and was spending more time with her new social circle, leaving me even more chances to be the constant in Ben's life. The only thing her lawyer brought up in court that truly stung was my absence at her mother's funeral. It had been on a work day, and I chose to stay at work rather than attend. Ben barely knew his grandmother, and Lauren's relationship with her mom had always been strained. Still, Lauren never forgave me, calling me selfish and unreliable. For the custody case, Lauren hired one of the top and most expensive family attorneys in town. I went with a younger lawyer with great reviews from other dads. She was direct, practical, and understood my strategy. Let the evidence speak. The night before court, I reviewed everything: school involvement, medical appointments, activities, and references. Ben's teacher had even written a letter stating I had been the primary pickup parent for over 3 years and never missed a conference. Walking into the courtroom, I was nervous but ready. Lauren looked confident, convinced a lawyer's narrative would stick, that I was an absent father who put work above family. Her lawyer started by portraying her as a hard-working single mom, raising Ben while I buried myself in my job. He mocked my blue-collar work, making it sound like being a mechanic made me less capable. He brought up the funeral to show my lack of commitment. I felt my face burn as he dismissed both my profession and character. Lauren nodded along, certain the judge would side with her. Then my lawyer stood. Calmly, she asked to present evidence of my role in Ben's life over the past 3 years. Piece by piece, she laid it out: school pickup records, the teacher's letter, medical records with my name, photos documenting our daily life, and character references from people who knew us. I watched Lauren's confidence fade. She whispered frantically to her lawyer as each exhibit was presented. He tried to argue my involvement was recent and calculated, but my lawyer countered with a timeline, over 2 years before the divorce was filed, and pointed out my pay cut as proof of commitment. The judge asked if they had any evidence to dispute mine. They didn't. Lauren had assumed being the mother would be enough. She had no letters, no medical records, no consistent proof of her daily role. After a recess to review the files, the judge ruled for shared parenting, alternating weeks, major holiday split, both parent welcome at school and medical events. She noted that while Lauren had been the primary caretaker early on, the past 3.5 years told a different story. Lauren cried. Her plan had crumbled because it was built on assumptions, not proof. I didn't feel victorious so much as relieved. I'd safeguarded my bond with my son by actually being a better father, not by tearing her down. In the weeks after, we worked out logistics. Ben adapted quickly. The week-on, week-off schedule gave him quality time with both parents. My life improved without Lauren's spending habits draining my income. I began saving for Ben's future, emergencies, and the occasional father-son trip. Our time together became richer and more relaxed. Lauren eventually adjusted too, though her new relationship didn't deliver the lifestyle she'd imagined. She never apologized for the courtroom remarks, but she did acknowledge I'd become a good father. Looking back, I'm proud I stayed focused. I could have dragged her personal issues into court, her spending, her temper, her relationship timeline, but I didn't. I let my actions speak. Today, Ben is 11. We have a bond nothing can break. He knows I'll be there for school events, homework, illnesses, and moments that matter. If I have one piece of advice for fathers in the same situation, it's this: don't wait until divorce papers are filed. Show up now. Document everything. But more importantly, be there. The insults about my job still sting when I think about them, but the evidence proved them wrong. 2 years into our shared custody, Ben is thriving, good grades, great friends, and 2 parents who care. Lauren and I will never be friends, but we've learned to co-parent. I'm still at the auto shop, still proud of what I do. The judge didn't care about my job title, only that I was a good father. That folder of records wasn't just paperwork. It represented 3 years of intentional parenting, the best investment I've ever made. And Ben was worth every single hour.